Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something huge, really a world-changing social experiment, China's one-child policy. It fundamentally shaped life and death for basically 1 in 6 people globally.
Yeah, and what's really wild about it, starting back in 1980, is who came up with it. You'd think maybe economists? Sociologists?
Right, the usual suspects for social policy.
Nope, it was actually military rocket scientists.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
They seem to think you could, I don't know, adjust human reproduction like levers on some kind of machine.
Rocket scientists.
Yeah.
Wow. So less about society, more like an engineering problem from the start. Okay, so our mission today is to unpack the real story here, using Fong's book, One Child, as our guide. Let's tackle that big assumption first. A lot of people, you probably included, think the one-child policy was key to China's massive economic growth.
Yeah, that's a common thought, but economists, they mostly push back on that. People like Arthur Kroper figure its contribution was tiny, maybe like 0.1% of that huge 10% GDP growth China saw.
Only 0.1%. So what was driving it then?
Well, the main things were, first, tons of cheap labor. But get this, that came from the baby boom in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, before the policy.
Exactly, before the policy. And second, big policy moves to get foreign investment in and let private businesses grow. So far from helping, the policy is actually, well, it's hurting future growth now.
Hurting it. How so? You mentioned a demographic time bomb earlier.
Yeah, it's created the situation where China's becoming, well, the phrase is too old, too male, and maybe too few. Think about it. By 2050, a quarter of the population will be over 65.
A quarter? Wow.
And their social safety net is just not ready for that kind of strain.
Yeah.
So China could genuinely get old before it gets rich. Plus, you've got the gender thing.
The imbalance rate.
A huge imbalance. Millions more men than women. These bare branches, they call them, guys who can't find wives. And that fuels horrible things like bride trafficking from nearby countries.
That's grim. And it brings us to the direct human cost. What was it like for people living under this?
It could be brutal. Enforcement often involved things like forced sterilizations, even late-term abortions. You had officials, like this one guy, Gao, admitting he authorized something like 1,500 abortions himself.
1,500. It raises huge questions about human dignity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And then there's this other tragedy, the Shidu parents. These are parents who lost their only child. By 2014, there were maybe 1 million of them.
1 million parents left with no support in old age.
Often, yes. You really saw this after disasters like the Sichuan earthquake. Just devastating.
So after all that, China finally changed course, right? Moved to a two-child policy in late 2015. But can they just undo decades of this? Has it worked?
Well, that's the thing. Even when they loosened it a bit earlier, in 2013, uptake was really low. Only about 1/10 of the couples who would have a second child actually applied to.
1/10? Why so few?
It seems many people just internalize the one-child idea. Plus, honestly, raising kids today is seen as just too costly and stressful. Think about city living costs, education, healthcare. It all adds up.
So turning the baby switch back on isn't so easy.
Not at all. Much harder than turning it off. Projections now show China's population peaking sometime between, say, 2020 and 2030, and then falling sharply, like back to 1950s levels by 2100.
And like you said, that won't just stay within China's borders. The global economy, supply chains, maybe even global power dynamics, this will have ripple effects everywhere.
For sure. And it leaves us all with a pretty deep question, doesn't it? When a state tries to engineer something so fundamental, so intimate as family life for what it sees as the greater good, what happens? What are those unintended consequences? Can you really engineer the human spirit?